am a lawyer and an engineer. So most of my work has been focused on sort of an interdisciplinary initiative. And I've been working on many issues that concern digital rights, that concern digital inclusion. Now recently I've been looking at a lot of work which is based on AI, looking at how technology can be used best for, human values or social good. So most of my work revolves around that. To put it shortly, I am a tech policy lawyer and I work very closely with the big tech companies. And I would just like to introduce my work by saying that, imagine building a car without really knowing, where you want to put the wheels, why you want to put the wheels. So that sums up my work, because as an engineer, as engineer and lawyer, that is what I do. I guide, engineers, I guide regulators, I guide policymakers as to how to bridge the gap between engineering and law. What kind of regulations can be brought in. For that, you require an astute understanding of the technology. You need an astute understanding of the laws. And more than that, you need to communicate really well and work with various stakeholders. So that is how I sum up my work. And maybe if you, more about myself would be, I belong to, my parents are from armed forces, and I grew up in army cantonments. So that was a really, good experience for me. They were doctors, and this taught me compassion for the underprivileged, and their zeal, for public service inspired me to serve as well. So that was the most critical, factor in shaping my outlook towards what I wanted to become. So, and we moved all around the country. I studied in many schools. So I'm just grateful for that experience because it shaped my personality. Because of which I value, variations in culture. I respect them, and there was immense exposure which made me independent-minded, and and that's it. So to basically give more, insight into my work, I would just like to say that, first of all, I have led several interdisciplinary projects in innovation, AI, internet shutdowns. I look at data privacy. I look at emerging technology in India. So I am presently I'm the head of legal and Koan advisory, and we are a public policy advisory. So we work very closely with governments. We work very closely with, big tech and intergovernmental organizations. So, the most important accomplishment in my work would be to mitigate ethical and, legal risks that have been posed by AI, artificial intelligence. Like I said right now, that, why it's important is because imagine, like I said, you make a car, but you don't know why you've deployed, let's say, airbags. You don't know anything about your work. So that is the current situation in India when it comes to, development of AI or probably any tech in India. So this was the most significant development in my professional journey, where I took up the challenge to create India's first, you can say, handbook for artificial intelligence developers and tech decision makers. The aim was to make them understand why, where, and how you must incorporate ethics and, protect user data within AI, when you're creating AI systems. So, like I said, why it's important, it's because, in the times to come, we're not going to be consuming technology like we do today, right? We are going to be, there'll be, by way of example, I'll tell you why this is important. Some time ago, there was this Amazon recruiting system, right? And eventually people realized that many women were not being accepted. They were being rejected by the AI. And then they realized that the AI had learned to discriminate against women because traditionally women were not employed, in many of the jobs. So this was a major repercussion of, how AI was functioning. Another problem is that, let's say you want to give bank loans to people. Another case study showed that many women were rejected, or there was a propensity to be rejected by the system. They were rejected from being given loans. And why is that? Because traditionally women were not, to want a credit or to want a bank loan, you have to have some sort of, a financial backing, some sort of a asset, and women did not own many of them. And this became a very big issue. And just imagine, Now, as we move forward, where most of the things, most decisions will be automated, we really have to understand where we are in the society, how what kind of products we make that do not perpetuate our internal biases. As humans, we have so many biases. As humans, we may want to discriminate, but when we make an AI is going to learn from us. It learns from the kind of data you feed in. That is what it learns from. So if we feed in biased data, it's going to learn biases. This is just one example. There are many issues. So this is why in my work, what I aimed at was trying to made engineers understand what we need to keep in mind, and so as such, there are many theories. We've already developed laws, but I think developers do not, they have, when we spoke to them, we did a collaborative exercise. We tried to understand why is it that they're not able to implement many of these many of these laws and these ethical theories in the systems. So we made an effort to make them understand how they could implement it. So it was one of the kind, because most of the work right now is available in mostly like legal work, or it's by way of something which is abstract or it's scattered all over. So that was a major development. And yeah, and one more interesting thing was that my work on digital inclusion and digital rights. So previously I used to work in a non-profit where I led a very important project, which is a project on internet shutdowns. I don't think I need to explain why internet is important, but I by looking at how the world is evolving, I feel that digital technology is going to be your mainstay of economy. We progressed through agriculture, then we went to manufacturing, then we went to digital age. This is where we are. And this digital age is so critical to understand. You have to be skilled. You have to, take everything online now. And yeah, this is the most important, aspect of how we are going to be evolving in future in terms of everything. So internet plays a very critical role here. But India has a dubious record of being the only democracy in the world with the longest and most frequent internet shutdowns in the world, which is quite sad. So, if you look at it, the government usually, they have the law and order problems. They want to address it. And sometimes, or actually mostly what happens is that they see internet shutdowns as a tool to completely shut down everything. They use it as a tool to control law and order. But I think we need a rethink on that sort of, we need to rethink about our strategies. Why, like I said, now we cannot treat internet as something which is just okay, it's available, or as a privilege. It is actually should be considered as a right. So my work was focused on that, like why internet shutdowns are, should be. I monitored them, and I also made a legal case about why we need to not have this, why is it wrong. And yeah, and I monitored them. We worked with several rights organizations. We worked with several stakeholders. A lot of people were affected, so we reached out to them, tried to understand what their problems were. And in terms of output, it was interesting because we petitioned before the courts. Gradually, this was also taken up before the parliament. There's now an IT parliamentary committee on internet shutdowns. They examine internet shutdowns. So gradually now there has been, an acknowledgement that internet needs to be viewed differently. And we are also taking a rights-based approach to internet, where we feel that it should be a basic right, a fundamental right. And I personally feel as a woman, it's most important. Why? Because, like I said, it is, I would say that as a woman, I am, it's so much, like it opens up such a big world to me, right? It gives me so much exposure. I'm able to skill myself, and I don't need to necessarily go to places, work in places which may probably have been uncomfortable earlier, like in manufacturing, for example, right? So it's so much easier, and I think it's a very big platform for empowerment for women. So we need to treat it a little differently. And there was one more interesting, I'm sorry if I'm going on, let me know if I need to stop. So one very important thing in my life was I began my journey in policy with my work in UNDP. And that was a very significant, or I can say a pivotal moment for me in my professional journey, because that is where I learned policy implementation. As a lawyer, we are just predisposed to, fighting cases or applying, like looking at theory, and putting the logic in our head. We can even make policies. But in UN, I realized, how you need to make policies which are closer to the ground. So that was immense exposure. I worked on environmental and tribal rights in UN. Again, it was, you might wonder how come, I went from environmental rights to tech, but my focus was always policy implementation. And that is where, and I work very closely on, something which is more like rights, IPR rights for the tribals. So, I mean, to put it shortly. So that was also very interesting. And I would say that, that was very close to my heart, because I grew up in areas which were always very green, which were forested because we moved around in the armed forces. And when I entered UN, that is one thing I passionately took up. I was very passionate about it, and I still am. So maybe in future, if I could, mix technology and environment together, that would be great. No, I think that's a very, very important question. And my professional journey has been, really, really been inspired by understanding how much I can learn, what I can do to make things better, and to actually get a grasp of what is it that's finally going to make the cut? What is it that's going to finally make the change? So these three experiences in UNDP with a nonprofit and with a think tank has been extremely important in making me understand that first, please do groundwork. You have to be close to the ground. We cannot make laws that are removed from the ground without understanding the realities. You have to go down there and get your hands dirty. You have to sit down with people, talk to them. In this process, there was a very interesting thing that came out. Another that was, you have to have a very well-rounded view of what you really want to do. So I could be in one organization, and that organization could be in all good faith thinking about something, about law or change in policy through their perspectives. And that's also important. But is that the complete perspective? I don't think so. So you need to move from there and, understand somebody else, the other perspectives too. And at least, maybe in my field, at least I feel that's important. So it's important to, like, now when I work with big tech, I get their concerns and I understand why they want big tech, or other any startups or tech. I'm just meant to say that, technology companies, what they want to do, how they view certain things. When I work with civil rights, I understand why it's so critical to, push for what you want, why it's important to work with. By the way, civil societies and nonprofits don't just mean, that we are only looking for, something which is legal, but there are many technology-based civil society movements. There's, for example, FSMI, Free Software Movement of India, where they make open source softwares. So that world was also great, because then I realized that there are so many intricately linked issues with rights. It's not just about law. It's about how there are people who are trying to push really like proper technologies that you can feel, that you can hold, hardwares or even softwares, to promote digital inclusion, to promote digital rights. So that experience exposed me to many kind of ideas, many kind of innovations in the world. And then, when you go to some other, a bigger organization like UN, then you learn about, what their approach is on policy implementations, what the possible hurdles are when you implement a certain idea on ground. So these two things are important. One, definitely work on ground. Second is you need to get a wider perspective. And all of this ultimately boils down to a large scale collaboration. Without working together with people from different disciplines, because I honestly feel that, I'm coming from an interdisciplinary background, but if I had not got the information, that I have right now through law and through engineering, I think my approach to solving issues in society would be very different. So always and always look for more diversity of thoughts. Always look for diversity in collaboration. It's really important. Okay, interesting. Yeah, I'll take the first question, which is about the role model. So my role model has been my grandmother. There has been no one else who's inspired me more than her. And why? Because, she comes from an era where you had to have sons, and she lost her husband at a very young age. She had 4 daughters, and they were probably the eldest one was probably in class 7 or class 8, maybe 12, 13-year-old. And no, she didn't get any support from from anybody else, because it was considered like, burden to have the daughter. And she had not done adequate studies also, because again, there was not much focus on women's education. And her story brings out so many facets to me, right? Because one, she independently, single-handedly, she took it upon herself that no, I'm not going to go back to that family that raised me, because there the expectations from women are different. They would never be allowed to step out and become doctors, and doctors, teachers, like the way they are. Like my mother's a doctor, her sister's a doctor. So she knew that it'll hamper their education. Second, she studied herself. She, whatever savings she had, she tried to manage with that. She studied and she got education on her own. So that was also phenomenal, because there was her strength, her courage, independent thought in her. And she brought them up, and she did whatever she could. In her journey, she was supported by many people who were compassionate. Of course, we always need more people. So that story has always inspired me, because it makes me feel that she, whatever she did it for her daughters. And it brings out many facets of the society for me, that how important it is for women to be economically independent, to study and to dream big. And you need, the most important thing is, you need support for women by the women. Like, if your mother can support you, if there are strong women in the house who support women, and they don't tell them, don't bog them down with the traditional stereotypical duties, I think there is really, like, they break all barriers. So she has been really important for me. And yeah, and that is what shaped up all my life, shaped up my thinking, my independent thought, which enabled me to become whatever I've become. There were never any obstacles. At least my mind was free, so I could pursue whatever I could. So, when I was a child, I was like, we always go back to how we, relate with things, and eventually we want to become those things. So I was always inspired by computers, by gadgets. I was always interested in seeing, how things work. And, this paved the way for my academic interest. And, and of course, gradually I was accepted into in one of the, finest colleges, engineering colleges in India. I'm from Delhi College of Engineering. And there I was exposed to many more things. For example, I designed a racing car. So there was a F1 racing car. We went to Silverstone, on that project. So it was fascinating. So there was so much exposure. So it kept on fueling my, passion for engineering. Then I was recruited, by a leading mobility and power company. Um, but I realized that, like I said, perhaps it's because of my parents, or it's because they were doctors and I could see their passion to help people, or it's because of my grandmother, because she was also like that. I realized that I wanted to, maybe pursuit of wealth wasn't as important, but what was more important to me was empowering underprivileged people. And how I could do that, I was thinking maybe by using the abilities that I have, which is my knowledge in technology. So yeah, and then I decided to move on to another phase in life, and I took up some teaching assignments also. I taught some girls. I taught them how to code, and and they were mostly underprivileged girls. It was a very tough journey, because it wasn't easy. They came from different backgrounds, and sometimes I felt that actually that's when I felt that access to technology is a privilege in India, because for us it was available, but for them, the basic things like computers were not available. Some of them actually had to attend to other duties at home. They would. It's just the mindset also, right? The priorities were different, and some of them got married, and they were taken away from Delhi, and then they were sent to smaller villages. Where they were from. I'm still in touch with 2 3 of them, and it's quite heartbreaking. But anyway, sorry for digressing. But the thing is, I felt that there are many issues to be addressed. Like you said, what is it that as a lawyer, what do you think is most important implementing a good rule, a good policy? This, okay, you want to do an initiative, but how do you do it? How do you understand the ground realities? We can't just open an institute and expect people to learn, because they have so many problems, right, in being empowered. So I felt that somehow I need to, first of all, the technology access should be a right, and then there are many other issues in society when you want to empower people. And that is why I felt that now I want to get into, I want to understand these rights. What are rights? How do we implement them? So policy making really intrigued me. Like, how can I make changes? And obviously, at the back of it was also, I somehow wanted to make safe access to technology right in India. I wanted to prevent technology from, being used to perpetuate social harm. There was an interesting development which came a little later, but thereafter I went to my law college. And then from there it was, there was no looking back. Then I got into policy making in UN. And, the shift to technology policy was interesting because I'll tell you, there was a very interesting personal incident which you may also relate to. So my grandmother, she's been my role model. And the reason, there's one more reason, is because she's a very kind woman, very spiritual. She has that compassion for people. So on her, I think it was 80th birthday, I gifted her a smartphone, and that's when smartphones were, now coming up in a few years back. So I gifted her a smartphone, thinking that she can access more knowledge on YouTube. She can listen to, more, secular discourses. Oh my God, that was, to my shock, to my surprise. I think a few months down the line, I realized she'd become a victim to fake news. Her, otherwise a very calm mind was so disturbed because what's happening, right? There's a lot of fake news going on in our country. So that was really surprising for me. And that's when it came home to me that no, this is a very serious issue. We need to resolve this. We need to resolve this at a technology level. We need to resolve this at a ethical level, or legal level, regulatory level. And if we can create technologies that can, or AI solutions or whatever that can intervene, do anything to curb this menace. Because I think it took me a very long time to, tell her bunk fake news, to show her, but it was so tough. It was always tough. So that is when I switched over to technology policy from UNDP, because that's when I realized this needs to be addressed. Yeah, that's my journey. I think, like I mentioned, I think that the incident that I said, that when I wanted to teach young girls, when I thought that I could teach them, I could empower them, things were not as easy. I would say that was a setback for me. It was a game changer for me. It changed my outlook towards life. Not like I had not seen setbacks before, but this was major, because I had set out to do something big. I set out to do something, something that could change lives. But that is what I felt was, like a problem for me. I say that is one important one. Otherwise, other things are very, very simple and doable. You have regular challenges. For example, if you were looking at internet shutdowns, there were problems with data collection. There were challenges with respect to how do we verify what we have. And for that was also interesting, because then we realized the solution would be to reach out to more and more people, more and more journalists, and to reach out to more and more human rights activists, civil liberty activists, and collaborate. So there were two learnings from this overall experiences. One is that, like I said, that first of all, we have to persevere. We have to have a lot of courage in what we're doing. Second is that we have to have a holistic understanding of what you want to do. You have to be very, very focused on understanding the issues. Just don't, before we start something, we should always try to address, get a broader view about the problem. I think that's the most important thing for me. So as far as being scared is concerned, it's not, I would just say that this is a broader free speech issue. And it's not just about internet shutdowns, it's a lot about what kind of censorship we see online. And that can be a problem in the long term. I hope as a democracy, we'll be able to address, we'll be able to identify why it's not healthy for us, why we need to have a better rules of engagement online, rules in the sense, more free speech. How it's a problem, this is a problem being addressed by companies also, social media platforms also, by other people also. So yeah, sometimes I would say scared for myself, because sometimes you have to think twice about, what you're saying, what you want to put out there, what kind of trolling would you attract. So sometimes that is also a concern. And and for people, it's not easy for them to reveal many issues, because, for example, if you look at shutdowns, they are mostly concentrated in specific areas in India. So maybe you just need to delete it. I can just tell you that. So it's a problem for them also, right? Because they need to reach out to you. There are many, I would just say that there are many sensitivities involved, right? Imagine, like I said, now internet is not just about communication. We should stop looking at it like a mode of entertainment. It's not there anymore. It's not about entertainment. It is a lot more than that. If you want to update your CT scan machines, if you want to update your MRI machines, you need the internet, because now everything is linked. If you want to get a good job, you need the internet. If you want to upskill yourself with crypto, blockchain, or any coding language, you need internet. So imagine a big generation, if you have shutdowns for over years, a generation not being able to learn, not being able to be exposed to that kind of tech, right? This is everywhere in India also. For example, Rajasthan has many shutdowns, and many other places have shutdowns. Imagine not being able to access internet. It's a problem. It's a we don't really register it, because in cities we are so used to it. It's just there. Can you do without your smartphone? If any problem is happening, anything you want to learn, the first thing you do is you type in on Google. And how do you get ideas for innovation? You only get ideas for innovation after you're exposed to something. How did we take to Uber? Why do we use Ola? Because we were exposed to it. We started using it. We started realizing, oh, this is convenient. And thereafter, many startups also took place in India. Like the startup boom happened. Why? If we were just treating internet as something which just comes and goes, I don't think we would have been where we are. India aspires to be, by the way, is it a $5 trillion economy and a $1 trillion digital economy in a few years? I think by 23, 25, I'll have to see that. But how do we get there? It's going to be with combined, association, a combined skilling of people, giving them the right environment. It's very important. Environment is super important in your growth. So for men and women, you need to include both. You can't, and for different regions of the country, if we have people from smaller towns coming to IITs, we celebrate those stories. But it happens so many times that, in many areas like 24 Parganas, or in Rajasthan, in small cities, noon mein ho gaya, suddenly there'll be a internet shutdown. And for really strange reasons, for cheating in examinations. I like I'm not saying that, all I'm saying that we need to rethink about how we think about internet, how we feel about internet, right? And this is not just about internet, it's just about technology in general. In crypto, for example, we are very, very averse. Or any other new technology, we are averse. We regulate out of fear without really talking and sitting with engineers, or sitting with people from different approaches, different fields, and understanding what is the potential of this. How can we build safeguards around this? Which is why I think this work on AI was so important, because that is what it looked into. How do we build safeguards around what we are creating? It was a very big, I would say, it was pivotal. It was important, because that's the first time, I would say, people actually got together, both engineers and lawmakers got together to really ideate and understand, how do we address many issues that our country is facing. Do we regulate out of fear, or do we regulate out of a sound understanding of where we want to get, what we are creating? Sure. So like I said, my focus going forward will be to look at how we can innovate very well. At the same time, how we can, have the right safeguards. So my aim will be to innovate, to promote innovations. Within that innovation, how do we, when I see my future, I would, specifically for women, I would love to create, I would love to serve as a mentor to them, or be a leader, an industry leader in my own field, whether it's by creating a product, or by skilling, or, figuring out the right kind of policy for them. So my aim is that to create sustainable solutions, which is going to serve the society well. It's going to, create the right kind of balance. I don't want to exclude anyone. I want to include everyone. I don't want to make internet or even digital access a privilege. I want to make it a basic right. This is going to be my journey. Whether I do it through law, whether I do it through policy making, or I do it through anything else. But that path could be anything, but the goal is that, how I can make it accessible. And as far as my sustainable living is concerned, so it's interesting. I would say that I think you have. If I look at many, I think I'm being a little technical here, but if you look at SDGs, very sustainable development goals, because those are the ways in which we can measure the impacts. I would say, first of all, the fact that I'm so keen on promoting digital inclusion, digital rights. It means that I want to have the goal is to have decent work, economic growth for people, to create an environment which is, which creates innovation. And this is through my tech policy work, where we have looked at evidence-based policy making. We don't create erratic policies. We create a predictability in the environment for technologies to thrive, for people to access internet, or to access technologies, to rely on them, to trust them. It basically cuts across many areas that I've been working on. For example, gaming, it could be data protection, it could be privacy. All of these have different impacts on society. They have different implications for rights for people. Then I would also say that in my work, I worked on environment. So there, then we look at how we can build a very sustainable environment. It can be for water, for land, for anything. So it is meant to bring a balance in the way we live our lives, and how we use the environment for our needs. So yeah, sorry, I'm sorry, I was not I don't have a great answer, a ready answer for this, but I'm also just trying to build two concepts together. But I would just say that it's important to reduce inequalities of all kinds, and it could be through my work in environment or through my work in tech. The main focus is, how we can make it better and, better for everybody. And so when you make it better for everybody, and so that means you treat environment with certain respect, you look at technologies with certain, through a certain, for social good lens, and you're constantly monitoring, you're constantly working hard, you're constantly, working with people, and you have your heart in the right place. So that's important. Yeah.